Welcome to our free webinar on courting with confidence.
We're Jeff and Kathy Teichert. We are the founders of an organization called Love in Later Years. Some of you know that. The acronym is Lily.
And we're going to be talking today about the 6 steps to make real progress in the dating world without spending years on dead-end relationships.
We did teach a prior course on kind of divorce recovery and personal development.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in a moment. Let's see.
Anyone who hasn't taken that one might want to consider it before they take this one. But
yes, and we will get into that. But first we wanted to just share that we are single life and relationship coaches. So everything from relationship loss to remarriage, or even marriage for those who have not been married yet. But basically, the relationship development is the final stages, and the beginning stages is that recovery from loss. And our mission is to help single adults intentionally heal from that loss and move forward to create happy lives and healthy relationships. And we start with happy lives because that's what creates healthy relationships.
right. And if you don't know if you want to have a relationship, this is also a good place to be to explore that, both this webinar and the course that we ultimately teach on it.
Before we dive into the 6 steps, we just wanted to do a little housekeeping. I took this picture in New York. This really spoke to me because when we were doing our life coach training and we were exploring thought work and how that works and how it benefits our lives, I saw this and I was like, oh, wow, this is a really great artistic impression of what is happening up here. What are we growing in our heads? Is it a nice fern like this? Is it weeds? Is it flowers? What are we growing?
Because it is kind of an organic process.
Mm-hmm. And weeds happen very naturally. Nicer plants and flowers need to be cultivated. They have to be planted and they have to be cared for. And so this is the same with our brains. And that's really a big part of our work with life coaching. And you can see, we don't want to just read through the slides because you can see them. But we'll just touch on these points real quick. So before you can move into the steps we're going to teach you today for courting with confidence, a real self-assessment is necessary. And being able to be honest with yourself and what you're growing in your mind, even seeing it as a mirror and reflection, is going to be the key. It's going to be the key to progress for you.
And being honest doesn't mean beating yourself up. We also talk about being compassionate with yourself. I love what Maya Angelou says, do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better. And that's really the spirit in which we're talking about thought work. If there were things you didn't know and you learned them later and they made your life easier and happier, well, you just know that you were doing the best you could with the knowledge you had. I mean, I think sometimes divorcees are afraid to confront mistakes they've made in the past because, boy, if I learned something new, that might mean I was wrong in the past and that I was really the one to blame, or I was the problem, or whatever. And thought work isn't about blaming someone. It's about helping us to move forward with the kind of thoughts and feelings we want to nurture in ourselves.
Exactly. And that self-reflective work is what you need before you can make these 6-step process work for you. And we have lots of coaching resources for this that we'll get into later, but we just wanted to give you an overall view of what we want to start with. And this is the course that Jeff was referring to. So we created our first course earlier this year, and it's a self-paced online course. And these are the 6 steps for designing a life you love after divorce. So for our divorcees who are present, and I know not all of you are in that situation, but for those who have been through divorce. Oh, sorry about that. How do I go back? Oh, there we go. um, these are the 6 steps that we teach at in great detail. And go ahead with the.
Yeah, if we look at what's in the way most of the time, particularly as we think about moving forward in new relationships, fear is what's in the way. So that's number one. We need to be able to not necessarily banish it, but at least deal with it in a way that doesn't paralyze us. And then thriving beyond the challenges that come from divorce. I mean, we've got trauma typically from a prior relationship, things that really hurt us. And that's an issue. So we may also have financial issues and things like that. In terms of divorce challenges. And so that's part of that module. Honoring the divine masculine and feminine, there's a lot to it, but essentially for our purposes today, it means men and women are different. That's okay.
And sometimes after divorce, we can be tempted to hate half the world's population.
Right. I mean, a man might become a woman hater, or a woman becomes a man hater, and we want to understand that we have the opportunity to appreciate once again the opposite sex and the unique gifts that they can bring to enhance and beautify the relationships we create. Establishing peace and remembering our wholeness. I like the word shalom, and we talk about this a lot actually in various venues, but I've been looking for that word for many years, that sort of sense of being centered and calm and peaceful. And the word shalom is a Hebrew word, and it does mean peace, but it means more than that. It means wholeness, it means restoration. And so when we talk about shalom, we're talking about that feeling of calmness, that feeling of restoration, that feeling of peace, and that feeling of redemption in a way. And we also encourage people to consider what the state of their heart is at any given moment. Not to personalize it too much, but Kathy recently went through a difficult loss of someone she loved. And I remember hearing her say, "I'm not in shalom. I'm feeling pretty disrupted." And that's a very natural thing. And we're all going to go through that in big situations like hers, or even the day-to-day little frustrations of being stuck in traffic or whatever.
And we're all human, so we're all going to have those moments, but we do have some really cool tools that we use ourselves and that we teach our clients to be able to come back into that place of peace.
Right. And just the first step on that is to notice, what is the state of your heart? Am I in a state of shalom, or am I disrupted? And once we can understand where we're at in a given moment, we can take steps to recenter ourselves.
Right.
So,
and then
being vulnerable.
Yeah, comfortable being real and vulnerable, which can be really scary. and that's a big step, I think, for most people after having been through a divorce, and then creating abundance and enjoy a well-lived life. And of course, that's kind of was our final, so that we.
You muted yourself.
I'm not sure what you missed. Sorry about that. Thank you. Anyway, living a well-lived life is something we want to do whether or not we're married, right? And so that's why we focus on that as kind of the wrap up for that course. And it is a highly recommended precursor before taking Courting with Confidence. And now we're going to dive into what you're here for. We just wanted to share that with you so that you knew that was a resource. And at some point, we might create a course for healing from other kinds of losses. But for right now, that's what we decided to focus on, so we could really narrow it down to what would be best for people who've been through divorce.
Yeah, this portion is just to introduce you to that course. We won't be going over these again necessarily
Right.
in this course. But if you're fresh off a divorce, that's one I would look at maybe before getting into the one we're talking about
And
tonight.
now the reason why you're here, courting with confidence, 6 steps to make real progress in the dating world. These are the 6 steps, and I'm not going to read through them, but if you want to take a quick screenshot, feel free. We're just giving you kind of a quick snapshot, and then we're going to dive into them.
Yeah, I want to say something about the overall concept of these 6 steps. I remember when I first became a mid-single, one of the concerns I had was about dating. I thought, well, gee, I haven't dated in a decade and a half or more. And I guess they do it different now, probably. And I was looking for resources that would sort of give me an idea of where to start, not just with dating, but with navigating the single world and all of that. And there was really nothing. I mean, in the way of books and things, you go to Deseret Book, you don't find a whole bunch of stuff on mid-single dating and Latter-day Saint dating and stuff like that. And when you do, it's for young singles. So I started to write a book myself, and I shelved it for a while, and then Kathy and I decided to later take it up and do it together. But for example, number 3, showing interest and arranging to meet. Well, how do I ask someone for a date? You can find all kinds of books filled with Latter-day Saint idealism about various things, but you're not going to find one that tells you how to actually ask for a date. And that sounds kind of strange, but how many of you, if you're honest, have been pretty nervous about picking up that phone or sending a text or whatever?
Well, and most any of that is written to young people.
Right.
And we're writing specifically to single adults who are probably re-entering the dating world after a break.
In many cases, yeah.
For whatever reason. Yeah, in many cases re-entering. You want to dive in?
Yeah, well, one other thing, mastering first dates and beyond, there's stuff in intentional courtship about etiquette. Like, what is acceptable to talk about on a first date? What's not acceptable to talk about? Now, we don't claim that we wrote the rule book on it.
No, we're not the experts. We just talk about what to consider.
Some guidance and ideas, keep your cell phone away. Don't be constantly texting when you're on a date. Things like that. There's a lot of practical tips in this section about how you go about dating again. And it's not just about, kneel down and pray and get inspiration. That's important too. But I think a lot of our folks want to know what they don't know. They want to know.
We want to help you with the coaching stuff.
Right. They want to know how to move forward and do this stuff in a way that they can feel confident in doing it.
Right. So moving forward, let's hop into transform your dating mindset. And again, that kind of goes back to that picture I took in New York. What's growing in your mind in terms of dating specifically? How do you feel about dating? And what do you think about it? Because how you feel about it is how you think about it. And it is a choice, and you can shift it.
If you go around,
if you want to,
always say, I hate dating. I'm so sick of it.
Yes. In fact, if there's any dating haters here, first of all, congratulations for coming to this. Thank you so much for being here. That's very brave of you. And second of all, this is exactly what we're here for, is to work on that paradigm that is keeping you stuck.
Right. Fear, we've talked about already, but let's face it, none of us likes to be judged, right? You don't like to go to work and have your boss, give you a scolding about something you did wrong. I mean, we don't like being judged. We don't like being evaluated negatively. And what do you do every time you ask someone for a date? You open yourself up to rejection. You open yourself up to the possibility that you're going to express an interest in someone, which is implied anytime you ask someone for a date, and that they might say in so many words, I'm so sorry, but I don't feel that way. Woo, it's deflating. So we're going
And we're
to
going to talk about rejection later, because that is definitely a part of the dating path until you remarry. And even then it can be part of your marriage, but hopefully not.
And how do you retain a kind of positive mindset even with that challenge? And that's something in the course that we delve into deeply.
Yeah. So like a butterfly, we want you to be willing to emerge from your cocoon and expand your comfort zone, become that beautiful butterfly checking out the flowers, explore what you'd like to create intentionally in the future and believe for it. And what we mean by believe for it is really honing in the faith that it'll show up in your life as you intentionally seek it. And we're here to cheer you on about that. And also, how many of you have heard, for those of you who like raise of hands, heard of the law of attraction? Are you familiar with it? Basically, it's what you focus on, you get more of. I mean, that's the basic definition. And we want that focus to be something that then works in your favor. So thinking and speaking in an affirmative way is going to do a lot more for your dating life than the complaints we hear often in the singles community. If you chime in on those conversations, it's going to keep you stuck.
Yeah, it's kind of like the law of the harvest: conceive, believe, receive.
Mm-hmm.
That's the idea.
And transitioning to a green flag focus, it doesn't mean ignore red flags. It just means focus on the qualities you do want in a person, the flip side of the characteristics rather than the flop side. Because if you are avoiding like the plague, you're avoiding the flops in a person, you're going to actually attract those flops. Exactly what you don't want is what's going to show up in your life.
Well, here's the other thing, folks, and we're a little bit unconventional on this subject, because the thing you'll hear from most dating coaches and mid-single, people who speak to mid-singles is, oh, don't ignore red flags. That's how you got in the mess you were in the first time you got married. Well, we see the point, but the problem is that usually we're so honed in on those that we can either miss other red flags, we can see red flags that aren't there, we can blow things out of proportion. Why? Because we're filled with trauma and we've got all kinds of things we're afraid of. And so we see them even when they're not that big a deal. And so we're not suggesting, like Kathy said, that we would ignore them. Mm-mm. We're suggesting let's keep some perspective and look for the good too. And kind of like
we're not worried that you're going to miss big red flags, because you've been conditioned to be really on alert, high alert for those things that you don't want in a relationship, because you've been schooled in the hard knocks of life to know what you don't want. We're not worried about that. We're more concerned that we have a green flag focus so that we are attracting what we do want.
Right. And if you're finding what you do want, chances are pretty good that you're going to avoid what you don't want without excessive focus on it.
And envisioning a bright future full of love is huge. Being willing to believe in what you haven't seen in your life yet.
Yeah, if you're a woman and you find a bright future full of love, is that going to be with a covert narcissist? Or if you're a guy, is that going to be with someone with borderline personality disorder? Probably not. So
I guess that's the common thing that most people bring to their therapists, right. Women versus men.
Right. And oftentimes,
did we hear that from a therapist?
Yes.
Yes.
and oftentimes people are diagnosing the former spouse themselves. So anyway, that's a blind alley, but
that is too soon. There we go. Sorry, I don't know which way I'm going. There we go. Step 2, expand your options and narrow your search. Now, that almost seems a little oxymoronish, but that is what we need to do. We need to expand options so we have more choices, and then narrow our search so that we're weeding out anybody that doesn't fit with us. And more quickly, so that we're not wasting their time and ours and making things more complicated than they need to be.
online dating is one way of expanding our options. It's not the only
And
way.
it is a big one.
It
And
is a big one.
intentional courtship chapter 9 is the wild west of mid-single life, is online dating.
Right.
We talk all about it.
And I always ask people when they say, I don't do online dating, I say, why not? Why don't you? I mean, it provides so many opportunities, but in truth, I can tell you why not. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do online dating. We met online. We are big fans of it. But there's a story in Intentional Courtship about the Notre Dame football player, Manti Te'o. Some of you may remember the big scandal where he fell in love online and didn't tell anybody he'd never actually met this person. And it turned out to be a man that was scamming him. And eventually this guy felt bad about what he'd been doing and killed his character off. And Manti Te'o tells the whole world that his girlfriend has died of leukemia. And of course, when the truth comes out, he's totally humiliated. I saw a documentary about this just recently where, he's now played 8 or 9 years in professional football, and it's still something he has to explain all the time. And so there are a lot of, people that'll try to fool you, and I don't want anyone to get paranoid about it, but we do talk about ways to recognize when that's happening and when to recognize the sincere ones, and how you deal with the potential of having someone waste a lot of your time and energy when they're not who they say they are.
Well, and that,
So-
yeah, and that, I think we're going to talk about that on the next slide, but the idea about expanding your options with online dating and other things, there's also the narrowing the search with clear guidelines for what you're looking for. And in Intentional Courtship, chapter 17 is the list, the qualities that you're looking for in a companion. If you know the top 3 to 5 that are absolute deal breakers, it's like walking into a store, and this is true for me. I know what colors I wear. I know what kind of shape I like, and I have to either walk into so we walked into a store actually over Labor Day weekend, and I saw all of these pastels and like muted colors I would never wear. And I thought for sure I would find nothing in the store. But I went searching for the bold colors I do wear, and I found them. But I had to basically bypass all of the stuff in the front of the store and dig deep and look carefully.
Right.
And
Well,
I think dating can be the same way. If you know the kind of colors, the personality, or even, but more importantly, the characteristics that are deal breakers for you, that you must have someone that has your faith maybe, or someone who has a certain amount in common with you, or everybody has a different list, and we would never ever claim to know what your list should be. I think that's a very soul searching kind of thing.
Yeah, do you want someone more passionate or more peaceful? There's not necessarily a wrong answer to that question. It's just a good one to ask yourself, so you have a clear idea.
Someone who's serious, someone who's silly. Do you want someone who makes you laugh, or someone who you can have deep conversations with? And it's not that you have to necessarily choose between them, but just the things that are the most important, and a short list is best, because then they're top of mind. And when you go in that store, it becomes so much easier to sort through what your options are, because you're wanting to expand the options, narrow the search, and
So-
that dichotomy.
Kathy, I think you were buying tops.
I was buying shirts.
How many shirts do you think there were in that store that you walked into where you found some?
I thought there would be none.
But no, how many total shirts?
Oh, thousands.
Yeah, probably thousands. And when you approach dating, how many people can you truly give a chance at a serious relationship? I mean, when I think about it, I probably, in terms of first dates in my mid-single years, I'm sure I went on over 100 of them, maybe more, maybe closer to 200.
Actually, I think we both did about 100-ish,
Yeah,
give or take.
and I mean, even then, how did I come up with those 100 as opposed to the thousands of people out there? And then once I've got 100 that I'm going to go on a first date with, how many of those can I go on second or third dates with? And then how many beyond that can I really seriously consider? Could this be the person? And when I think about the number of relationships that I had, I mean, committed relationships
It was
during,
like a handful, right?
during my mid-single years, I probably chose my eternal companion realistically out of 6 people.
But those 6 people were really promising because you dated the 100.
Right. And I had some idea of how to winnow them out so that I would not waste a lot of time on people that there was no potential with. And really that's part of the deal. I mean, I hate to make it sound like it's a total numbers game, but there's an element of that. I mean, if
Well, and that's why we say as long as it takes, and consistency is the key. So making sure you're pacing yourself in a marathon kind of way rather than sprinting and then giving up, and maybe even for years at a time taking a break from dating because you're so worn out.
right.
So it's kind of a long haul quest. And then for me, I just kept thinking, okay, my eternal companion, I'm gonna find him. It's part of this process, and that's the prize, and it's worth it. And it was.
Right. And Kathy will also tell you, if she's really being honest, that sometimes she wasted time with guys that she really knew weren't going anywhere.
That goes back to the fear in the step 1, is
Right.
overcoming fear as part of that dating mindset shift. And it was kind of a revelation to me when I started noticing I was doing stuff to sabotage relationships that had potential and kind of stick with ones that didn't. I was like, oh, yep, I'm doing that.
Which is why I got dumped like 3 times. But anyway.
Well, we weren't ready, and there was reasons for that too. But
no, it's a more complicated conversation than that. But we just want you to know, kind of, to set the table for what we're going to be talking about in this part, is how do you work through the numbers of people out there to give yourself the chance to find the right one.
For anyone wondering what LDRs are, that's long distance relationships. So you can consider widening your geography if that's something you can picture yourself doing. That expands your options, as does using social media to your advantage, which we always encourage you in singles groups to be the positive voice. Because if you are that, you're going to stand out in most groups. Now, our group, Love in Later Years, we have mostly positive people there, and it's fabulous. Like we have so many wonderful people there, and we're so glad you're part of that group. If you're not, please come join. But there's so many groups out there that people are just hurting and lashing out and throwing out things that they're hurting about, and it's understandable, but you can be a light, especially if you've done that mind work that we talked about.
Right.
And balancing internet safety with letting yourself be known. I think that's just something I wanted to touch on really quick, is you want to be vulnerable, but you want to be safe, right? And so you don't share personal information in terms of your number, your address, identifying features, your last name, stuff like that. But you want to be vulnerable in the way of, you know what, I'm going to be real. I'm not going to share everything about who I am with perfect strangers, but I'm going to at least let them know I'm open to discussing everything at the point where, at the appropriate point that we've grown trust.
Yeah, and we're going to talk to you more during the course about how to move from online chatting to in-person date, because months and months of online chatting are getting you nowhere.
Right. Okay. Right. Step 3, show interest and arrange to meet. And this is something we've encouraged you to do relatively soon after meeting someone online, so that it doesn't become a perpetual online relationship that you don't even know if this person is real yet.
Right. Kind of like the Manti Te'o situation we talked about. And don't get me wrong, I'm a fan. He's a good guy, and he just made a mistake when he was really young and did something stupid, and he ended up being humiliated in front of the entire world. So
well, and that's not likely to happen.
No.
But approaching,
although I know a mid-single who this recently happened to, and she was chatting online with somebody in a foreign country who claimed to be a surgeon, And lo and behold, he had a child that really needed money for an operation and they couldn't afford it. And you know what? You know how many times I've heard that story in various variations? I can spot that a mile away. Maybe you can, but maybe you can't. So that's something we'll talk about.
Yeah. So real quick, let's talk about first date safety. So meeting in a well-lit place, coming and going in separate cars. I know it's not like the traditional come pick me up and court me. We're very,
The world's changed.
yeah,
since
we're
those days.
very big fans of that kind of chivalry, but that's for later after you've met in person once, like on your own, showing up in your own vehicles.
Right.
Now, obviously, there's some exceptions to that, and we'll let you decide for yourself, but that's just, some basic first date safety tips. For intentional flirting, for men and for women, it's a little bit different, I think, but we do believe that you have the power to influence your dating life. And with men, it's by taking the lead, by taking that leadership role. And with women, it's dropping your metaphorical handkerchief. If you've ever heard of the olden days where the women would have handkerchiefs and they would drop them on purpose so that the man would come pick it up and then take the lead in a conversation. So nowadays we don't have the handkerchief, but you have metaphorical handkerchiefs. There's ways in which you can show your interest without being so forward that the man doesn't have the opportunity to lead it.
Right.
Now, approaching someone special, that's a chapter in our book, and that's a good kind of basics for, okay, when you're interested in someone, how do you approach them? A lot of people want to do so in a way that's safe, that like you could have plausible deniability and like, oh no, I don't really like you. No, I just meant,
I just meant friends.
yeah. Yeah. And
I'm dating someone else. Oh, I just meant that I wanted to be friends.
we encourage you to be more vulnerable than that. And that might mean also being hurt a little bit sometimes. But when you have, that mind work that you've done and you know who you are and you are confident in yourself, then if someone turns you down, you're like, you're lost.
Next.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah. So part of it is just that business of understanding that there's no guarantees. We can't give you the moves. We can't give you the right pickup line that guarantees that she's going to say yes. No, part of the thrill of dating is when she does say yes, when you knew she could have said no, or vice versa.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So, and then of course, for long distance situations, video calls are a great first date.
Right. And I did a lot of, when I lived in Texas for 3 years, I did a lot of video dates, first and second dates, because I didn't necessarily want to say drive 5-6 hours all the way to Dallas from where I lived.
You want to see if there's
for a date, unless I
connection
had
first.
some idea that it might
Mm-hmm.
work out well.
Because there's conversational chemistry and you can learn that from that face-to-face.
Yeah, and you get a little idea about how the person lives. Is their house a mess or is it tidy? You might see their kids come in and out, and how do they interact with them?
Mm-hmm.
Just little clues like that really help.
Yeah.
So,
all right, on to step 4, master first dates and beyond. And this is going to be a fun one. First dates arranged, now what? That's a chapter in our book as well. And if you take the course that is going to help you integrate all these steps, you're going to be getting audio chapters of these chapters. So we recorded in our own voices those chapters that would apply to this course.
Yeah, this is anything from like, how much do I spend on a first date, to, how do I plan the activity? What do I do if I've been the one asked on the date? Is it okay for me to change the plan if I was the one who didn't ask? Who pays?
Yeah.
If the woman is the one who asks for the date, who pays? And physical affection, and then we talk about hugs there as well. this was something that came up fairly early for me. I went on a date with a beautiful woman, first date, first date since my divorce, in fact. And I remember going and seeing her and being kind of blown away by how pretty she was, the way her dark curls fell around her shoulders and this blue dress she was wearing. And she gave me a big hug. I didn't know what that meant. She gave me another one on the way out, and that felt really good, you know. What does that mean? Well, I went and talked to my cousin who had been divorced for several years by that time. And he said, that's customary. It doesn't indicate that they have an interest in you. Well, I was a little crestfallen, but at least I had an idea of what that meant then.
I think I had that same experience when I first re-entered the dating world, where a hug was a big deal because that wasn't a thing I did for the 15 years I was married.
At least with anybody but your husband.
All right. So for me, that was big, but then I understood over time that that was normal.
Yeah, it was a customary thing. And
Mhm.
I mean, there's no reason you need to be bashful about it or anything like that. I think it's a nice tradition, but you don't interpret it as meaning that there's a serious interest.
Well, and let's be honest. Some people for kiss on the first date, and I know a lot of people are very appalled by that, and totally fine if that's not, if your policy is to not, fine. That's actually, I think, in line with the RAM model, which is so it's the relationship attachment, that we don't do physical affection sooner than we've built trust and knowing a person. And sometimes first dates can be after a long time of getting to know somebody by video chat because you're long distance or whatever. So I think there's different various situations. So we're not a big fan of rules, that are set in
Like
stone.
formulas that you follow to the letter.
Right. I think each situation has its own qualities, but the idea is that physical affection should follow that relationship attachment that is being built and always be less than that.
Yeah, and I would just use a simple example of kind of what I think Kathy is saying. There was a girl that
It comes from, by the way, the book How to Avoid
falling in love with a jerk. But there was a girl that I was dating long distance because I was living in Texas and she lived in a different state. And in fact, her family had known my family for some time. I knew her a little before we started talking online, but not a huge amount. But anyway, we didn't see each other in person for probably 5 months when we were talking almost on a daily basis, either by phone, text, or even online video dates and things like that. And when we met for our first in-person date, yeah, the customary hug occurred at the beginning, and the one after we came out of the restaurant, she put her arms around me. She was rubbing my back up and down, and she lingered. Okay, now that's a little different from the
That's
customary.
beyond customary.
That's a little different than the customary coming and going. So we talk a little bit about the cues. There's nothing foolproof, but we talk a little bit about understanding the cues of the other person and being sensitive to those too, because you don't want to lean in for a kiss with somebody who clearly doesn't want that. So that's part of this too.
Well, and as far as timeliness, phone X's and hugs, you can probably guess what we're going to say about that. But just, trying to respect the other person's time and be as timely as you can. Being respectful of their time would also include letting them know if you're running late.
Never, ever be texting with another dating partner when you're with someone, a dating partner.
That and believe it or not, if you put a phone on a counter, like where you're having dinner, let's say, and it's off, maybe it's even upside down. Did you know that limits connection? It actually there's been studies that show that people don't open up as much if there's a phone in front of them, even if it's even if it's pushed aside. So if you could tuck it away visually, it's better to just not have it out at all.
Yeah, I mean, if you hear that phone buzz and you're curious, maybe you're distracted and you're not paying as much attention to your partner.
So
So
put
we
it
go
on
over,
silent would be ideal, but also if you have kids, if you are a single parent and your kids might need you, you could tell them, I value your time and I'm not going to answer my phone unless it's one of my kids. And I think they'll understand that. But
yeah,
I
and
think
then
it's good to preface it.
you want to educate your kids too, not to call unless it's something urgent.
And then for first dates, probably best to not emphasize exes. I don't think that means don't refer to them at all. I think it's okay to say that I have a former spouse,
right.
but and this is why a reasonable amount of healing needs to be done before entering the dating world, so that you're not in a position where you just can't not talk about them 24/7.
And this was a mistake we both made at different times in our
Mhm.
mid-single dating careers. That's one reason we wrote it in intentional courtship, is we didn't want other people to make the same mistakes we made. Because I've been on a number of dates where we're talking about our exes and we're talking about how they did us wrong during divorce and all of this stuff. They broke their covenants, the stuff people say. And it feels really good in the moment, while you're doing it. Oh, this person understands
Well,
me.
and if both people are doing, there might even be some trauma bonding.
For sure. But then you get to the end of the date and you say your goodbyes, and almost invariably when I would do that, I would feel sick inside. And I just think it's the wrong basis on which to begin a potential relationship.
Right.
Yeah. There'll come a time to talk about all of that, to be transparent, and we don't want you to fool anybody or anything like that. But probably not the best idea for a first date to engage in trauma bonding.
Yeah. Well, because then you could end up in a relationship with that person and it's going to be a lot of drama.
Right.
And hardship, especially if you're not each doing the work to heal together.
It reminds me, there's this one dating partner Kathy had, and he seems to show up every 3 or 4 years and send her a text. And, she's married for a long time now, but it seems like it very quickly starts into drama the second he shows up. It's kind of,
well, and this is what's interesting, is that we all have an energy about us. And when our energy is high vibration, because we've really worked at it, because we've planted those flowers or those ferns or those lovely plants in our brains, in a way that we don't want the weeds to what's the word, be infested.
nurtured.
Well, infested. Like we don't want those weeds or pests to infest our flower garden that we've worked really hard in our brains to create. Now, that doesn't mean we can't deal with nasty people and maintain a high vibration. I think that's ideal when we can, but there's some people who are just in a lower vibration that just don't know how to exist on that space.
And that could
they're
be
not ready for it.
Your ex-husband or your ex-wife, and they're still texting you nasty stuff after years or whatever.
Right. And we all have kind of our crosses to bear in terms of dealing with people who may not have the same motivation to be in a higher vibrational plane. But you're here.
Boundaries.
I'm assuming you're here and you're watching this because you do care about your own mind and your own heart and how you're showing up in relationships, which is great. And we want you to be able to attract those people who are going to be good for you. And in terms of questions to ask and which to steer clear of, we do leave that up to you. But have you ever gotten this like a Neil-timed question where on a first date someone asks you something rather inappropriate, or even just,
have you ever had sex outside of marriage? Do you have any church court action over your divorce?
What's your worst sin?
Yeah.
I mean, or maybe even, why did you get divorced? That's a big one. That's a very common question. And I think people think it's something that they're allowed to ask. And it is something you should be willing to talk about, but not necessarily when you just barely meet someone. And if it's something you don't feel comfortable answering with how well you know them, I always feel like it's a good idea to preface that conversation with, I I just met you, and I would be open to discussing that when I know you better.
Right. And it doesn't have to be, okay, in a year when I know you better.
No,
It can be after a couple more dates or whatever. It's
you asked me a rather pointed question on our second date, and I
right.
answered it.
That's true. And I
But we'd already
volunteered
had some really deep conversations by phone, and so I think we were in a place that could be managed.
Yeah, I think the what we'll talk about in the course in more detail is, kind of asking questions that are appropriate to the time in the relationship that you're in. Now, I encountered a lot of times when um, women that I dated had a whole list of red flag questions. And all right, have you ever been involved in pornography? Do you have any active addictions? Did you ever have a restraining order against you in a marriage? All those kinds of things. And uh, I could have answered all the questions that I just brought up in a way that would have been fine. I didn't have anything to hide in that regard, but still, if it was asked too early, it just felt kind of more like a job interview than a date.
And let's be honest, dating is an interview of sorts, but we want to try and make it as natural as possible.
Right.
Now, the paying, speaking of natural, what's natural for paying?
Well, I believe the asker pays, and the other person can.
So if I'm a woman and I ask a guy out, like, it's my treat.
And if he can volunteer to pay his half, or he can volunteer to pay for all of it.
Or I think even if you say, hey, I can't afford a lot, but if we could go stag, I'd love to spend some time with you. Like,
Right.
I think that could be appropriate as well if you have that conversation up front.
But I think the reason that it's good etiquette that the asker pays is because that's the person that controls the cost. They're inviting the other person to a particular activity, rough idea how much an entree at this restaurant is going to cost, or knows what these tickets are going to cost, whatever. And I have been in situations on a couple of occasions where budget was tight and a woman had asked me on a date to a particular restaurant. And I went, and then she just sort of sat there waiting for me to pay when it was over. And I thought, that's something that really should have, as a matter of courtesy, should have been discussed up front. Mm-hmm. And so, I think that's we're going to talk about.
I don't think there's anything wrong with asking if you want to discuss it up front.
Yeah, discuss it up front if you want to take somebody to Benihana's.
Maybe it could be your treat. Like assuming the guy asked the woman, I don't know. It could be a flirty kind of ask.
Right.
You could do that.
And the biggest thing on this is to be clear or to plan on paying, mm-hmm. And typically I got to the point where if somebody wanted to ask me on a relatively more expensive date, I would just ask, okay, is this Dutch or, just to clarify what the expectation was.
Right. Okay. Moving on to step 5, navigating the end of dating relationships. And that's something very important to learn how to do well. I believe that's a big part of our human interaction stewardship, which is a podcast we recently released. It's also a reality for the single journey is rejection. And we've got Lily Pod episodes 117 to 119 is our rejection series. And if you haven't listened to them, I would highly recommend that, because everybody who's here is facing this dating journey and has to deal with that.
Right. Either if you're the one giving the rejection or if you're the one receiving it. And this was something, frankly, when we both started out dating as mid-singles, there wasn't a lot of guidance on it.
Now, you might wonder, why are we not navigating the start of a marriage? Well, that's only just because that's not for this course. So this is kind of until you find that person and you start to get more serious and pairing up, which would be the course subject of the next one. which we'll get to in a bit, but we're focusing more on the single journey in which relationships end unless they become more, and at that point you need more of the relationship development portion of the book, the course, and also Jeff does some really great premarital coaching. So when you get to that point when rejection is not a thing and you both are in, that's you've got some resources with us as well.
And we'll talk some about how you move from a relationship that's new and casual to a little bit more serious. But yeah, the are we contemplating marriage is for the next course.
Yeah. So deciding ahead of time how to give and receive rejection is huge. That's kind of like deciding ahead of time if you're going to do drugs or drink at a party. I mean, if you know that answer, then it's a lot easier. And you get to show up the way you want to be rather than, given to the emotion around it. Avoiding codependency. We highly advise that you don't continue in a relationship that doesn't add to your life. Because
Right.
why do that?
If it's filled with drama, filled with
it's not worth settling
unhappiness.
for something that isn't going to be good long term, because that's what's going to keep you stuck in dead-end relationships for a long time. Again, keep dating consistently. Remember, it only has to work once. And we don't really have time to get into telling the whole truth, but I'll just, in a nutshell, what it means is
don't tell the white lies to spare the other person's feelings.
But also, and then don't do a long drawn out thing, but the whole truth is, hey, this is why. Well, it's not really a list of why it doesn't work either. It's kind of like the whole truth is, I have really enjoyed dating you and I really like these things about you, and I'm looking for something else.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I don't want you to do. And this is just an example. There could be multiple variations on this, but I don't want you to break up with someone and say, I'm just not ready for a relationship right now. And then 2 weeks later, you're dating somebody else exclusively.
And that's not the whole truth.
And that's not the truth. And it's when the other person learns, if they do, that's the decision you've made, it can harm your reputation for honesty. And not only that, it can hurt feelings and things like that, because you told them something to spare their feelings instead of treating them like an adult.
Right.
And
we all are adults here, so
yeah,
at least we try to be.
So that's the gist of that, but there are many, many variations.
And last but not least, in the steps is make dating fun. We've got a chapter in intentional courtship called Adventures in Dating. It's a fun little chapter, and
a few of our favorite examples
of dates that we went on individually with other people, and then also our own courtship, a little, just some of our favorite dates together. Showing up with a good attitude and making your own fun is huge. And that kind of returns us to the dating mindset. What we focus on grows. And so making dating fun actually is motivating, right? To continue doing it for as long as it takes. And then, make sure you watch what you say to others about your dating experience, because that's going to be part of that focus. And if the law of attraction is working in your favor or not. And then commit to think and speak positively. And just that commitment alone is going to be huge. It's going to be, and people are probably going to be like, oh, you're just lucky. I swear that's what they're going to say.
People tell us that all the time.
You're just lucky.
And we didn't have the easiest dating journey, but I mean, we love each other. Can you tell?
It was really hard though, like getting here. So we're not sugarcoating this. We're not saying it's going to be all roses, but it is going to be a journey that you can speak positively about for years to come in a way that will enhance and even elevate your eventual marriage. Because when we uphold the people that we dated and respect and become even friends with them, if we're still in touch, like together as a couple, it's uplifting. Like love is additive. Like when it's really love, it is so additive.
We're currently working on publishing a book that we didn't write. It was written by another couple that were mid-singles, both divorced. And we're helping to edit this book, and we're going to help them get it out because it's a needed resource. And the wife in that couple is one of my former dating partners. And
we don't really think about that.
we don't think about that much anymore. We've gone out on double dates with them, and they're great people. I have, no hard feelings, and neither does she, and neither does either of our partners. But it's just, I think if we conduct ourselves as adults in this process, it doesn't have to be awkward. It doesn't have to be weird. The fact that you broke up with somebody doesn't have to mean that either of you is less than. And so that's part of what we're going to talk about. The last point I want to make on this, make dating fun. It says, watch what you say to others about dating. Now, if you're one of the people who says, I hate dating, and we hear that all the time, I'd like to say I don't understand it. I do. I understand it because, like I said in the beginning, we are setting ourselves up anytime we approach someone to date us or to move forward in a relationship. We're making ourselves vulnerable to being rejected, to being judged, to being found wanting, and that's hard. And we get that. However, I want you to think for just a second about what dating really is. It's getting to know another person. We dress it up with all these ideas about, is this the one? It's an interview for eternity, and really, let's dial it back a notch and say, well, what I'm really trying to do is getting to know another human being, and people are interesting. Everybody's got a story. They've all been places and done things, particularly if they're mid-singles. They've traveled, they've gone on missions, they've been married and had kids and raised kids and things before. They've got a wealth of stories and experiences and ideas, and it can be fascinating to just get out there and meet somebody. And I had a lot of first dates that I knew half an hour in weren't going anywhere. I still had a good time on the date because I got to know somebody new, and they were interesting, and it caused me to think about things in a little different way, something like that. And so when we talk about make dating fun, let's not make it harder and more complicated than it is. And one thing I've heard from a lot of guys, I want to say this to the girls, and I'll say it again, probably multiple times when we're teaching the class. An invitation for a date is a commitment for one evening. That's it. You don't need to assume that he has a serious interest in you, that he wants to marry you.
That actually goes back to what I meant to say when we were talking about first dates and kisses. I think I got off on like a different route, but what I was trying to say is whether it's a kiss or a handhold or even a hug, like in your case, don't assume what the other person means by it unless you have a conversation.
Right.
It needs to be talked about.
Yeah, and don't assume that, I don't want to lead him on when I'm not gung-ho about him. Well, there's no guarantee that he's gung-ho about you either. It might be something he's just willing to take a shot at and see what happens. Consider it like he just wants to get to know you a little bit and maybe go forward with it after that, and maybe not. But don't just make the assumption that he's got this serious interest because he asked you out for a date. I think putting that much, making it that loaded to make the assumption that he's really interested just because he asked you out is weighing down that date. It's making it a lot more scary than it needs to be.
And this is why
for both people.
Lots of dates can make a little bit of a lighter experience in the way that it makes it more natural.
Right.
Yeah. So, now we're going to move out of these 6 steps. I hope that you found them helpful, and we appreciate you being here and listening, and really taking note of, and how these will help. Now, we want to We want to maybe open it up for just questions about the 6 steps before we finish up. Does anybody have any questions?
We did have a couple in the comments. Why don't we start there, and the rest of you can be formulating some questions that you might like to ask.
They weren't questions, but they were really good comments. So
And let's discuss those briefly.
one of them mentioned that in certain places, let's see, let's bring up the chat. I'll just read it.
I like Kathleen's there too, so let's discuss that.
Yeah, for
after.
those not in the Idaho, Utah, Arizona, California, what she calls the LDS wilderness, LDRs are to be expected. And another thing, another comment is, I say keep first dates simple. Meet up for ice cream, a walk. Lunch is a much lower key, more mellow opportunity. And one person says, I can't imagine going on 100 dates.
Well, it took me probably 7 years. So
for me, it took about 3. But I was insane. And I lost a lot of sleep, and it was not even really healthy. Good for me. I know. I was trying to find you.
That's because you're both players.
Well, maybe a little bit. Although we sincerely cared about our people, like, especially the people we got close to.
I want to reconcile Kathleen's 2 comments as well, because she says if we're outside of the Utah, Idaho, Arizona, California area, LDRs are expected, which I agree that sometimes that's what you've got to do to meet anybody. And then the other one is she tends to keep first dates low key, like just get a soda, which I also agree with. However, let's suppose that you meet someone online that lives 5-10 hours away, maybe even an airplane flight away. You're not going to catch a plane or drive for 5 to 10 hours to get a soda with somebody. You know, at that point, you've got to be more convinced.
You're going to already be committed enough that you're going to make it a whole day.
That you're going to at least think that there's some possibility of this working out.
Right.
And so what I would suggest for that situation is you each bring your own soda to that first Zoom date, and you just talk. And you know, I guess you'll make your own decision about how many kind of video dates you're going to have before you agree somebody's going to travel, so that you can meet in person.
Well, it's interesting.
I never did less than 5, though.
It's interesting that Carl mentions that we were players, and that's an interesting perspective. And it's fine. It's lighthearted comment, I'm assuming. But if we were a little extreme in our dating, like, enthusiasm, if that rubs off a little bit on our clients who may be a little more shy, that's okay with us.
Right.
I hope that's what happens. Anyway, we're going to share the first 2 slides again that was requested. So we'll just
yeah, feel free to pull out your camera and take a photo if that helps.
All right,
you.
So here's slide 2 or 1. I'll stay on it for a second. And then here's slide 2. And we'll go ahead and just give you the slides really quick. Besides that, slide 2. So slide 3, slide 4, 5, and 6. Now, we do actually have a few more slides, but they will go very quick. But we do want you to know what your options are in terms of the resources that we offer. So now that we've shared this 6-step process, you now have the opportunity to sign up for our 12-week course, which will help you integrate those steps and make that real progress. And as you can tell, there's a lot
to think about.
Yeah, it's obviously we're going to go into much more depth. We gave you as much as we possibly could in this hour together. All of our courses are inspired by the guideposts that are the basically the basic gist of the intentional courtship section. So our first section is peace. The second section is making progress in the dating world, and this third section is pairing up. And as we mentioned, our intentional courtship is our Amazon bestseller. It has ranked as high as number 6 in Christianity and psychology categories, which is awesome. And we've had a lot of really positive feedback. People who felt inspired to study it for a year and like really, really go to town like it's a textbook. And I mean, I think she called it a heavenly endorsement.
Something like
Because
that.
someone had felt that inspiration. And I know there's been several book clubs going on it. And these courses are not, these do not follow the book, but they're inspired on those basic guidelines to navigating the mid-single life, all the way from recovering from loss, which in the book is more generalized, but in the course is specific for divorce. That course is available on demand, and then this Courting with Confidence is live starting September 19th, and then pairing up with your person will be next year. Moving on to the next slide. This is the schedule. If you want to take a quick screenshot just so you can have the dates, if you think you'll be taking the courses so you can put them in your calendar, that would be awesome. And we'll open up this for Q&A in just a moment, but we'll also, what we have for those of you who are attending live, actually, let me go back to this. For those of you who are attending live, in the chats before you entered the meeting, we put links to everything. So you could just easily click on what you know you want to do and sign up. And it's all there already, because we didn't want to waste your time with putting them in the chats, and we wanted you to have access to it all. So make sure that you copy anything that you're interested in, or the last link is to our website. It's all there too. You can navigate and find all of it there. We wanted to, mention that we're here to help you remember who you are, your divinity, because we are all sons and daughters of God. And that makes us of divine heritage, divine royalty. And ultimately, we want you to find your own royal partner and your royal wedding.
Yeah, I think, as I'm thinking some of this through, a lot of us who have been divorced have felt like we were a little bit less than, or we had, President McKay was fond of quoting the phrase there that no other success can compensate for failure in the home. When I got divorced, I thought I'd failed in the home. And I thought, well, what else can I do that would make up for what I've failed at? And I really took that, that was a very painful thought for me for years. And I think rather than thinking in that way, we can understand, I think, that when we think about the atonement of Jesus Christ, God, our God, is a God of second chances. He's a God of redemption. He's not a God of never having sinned. He's not a God for only the perfect. He's a God for sinners that need another chance. And I'm not saying that, any of you were major sinners in your marriages. I don't know the circumstances. I'm just saying that, boy, we feel like we failed in the home, even though we really tried in many cases. And I like what President John Taylor says here. Do you feel as though some dreadful calamity has happened to you? Did I feel that way after I got divorced? Damn right I did. Have you forgot who you are and what your object is?
I definitely forgot who I was.
That's when we feel like we've been through a tragedy. Have you forgot that you profess to be saints of the Most High God, clothed upon with the holy priesthood? Have you forgot that you are aiming to become kings and priests to the Lord and queens and priestesses to him? President John Taylor is the author of that. I read sometime earlier this week about I think it was in section 121 of the Doctrine and Covenants, where it says, don't lift up your heel against the Lord's anointed. I always used to think that that meant the prophet or the apostles. Well, it does mean that, of course. But who's the Lord's anointed? Last I checked, I was anointed in the temple to become a king and a priest, just like President Nelson was. Just like, Elder Uchtdorf or anybody else we admire in authority in the church. Probably most or all of you have that same anointing. So are you the Lord's anointed? I think you're the Lord's anointed. And that doesn't change because you got a divorce or because you made it to age 40 and you're still not married. That doesn't change the fact that you're aiming to become kings and priests to the Lord and queens and priestesses to him, and that you've been anointed to become that, and that you have all of the kingly or queenly power you need to call down the powers of heaven and make something beautiful, even if you feel like your life was broken.
And at the foundation of everything we do, that is our mission, is to help our clients heal from loss and move forward to create happy lives and healthy relationships with this knowledge, this deep and profound knowledge that you can be confident about who you are at your core.
If I can make one tiny little plug for getting married, I mean, we don't like to push that. We're not wanting anyone to be in a hurry. But people say, oh, I'm just focused on my kids right now. It's okay if I don't ever get married. We hear that a lot. Is it really? Is it really okay if you never get married? Well, if you tried, I guess, if you did your best, I mean, nobody can expect more of you than that. But is it okay to walk around saying, I'm kind of indifferent to it? Is that really what we believe? I don't think so.
I think sometimes we're afraid to want it.
I think sometimes we're afraid to
admit
want
that
it
we do.
because we're afraid we'll get hurt again.
Yeah.
We're afraid we won't be able to accomplish what we boldly say we want.
And
And
we totally understand why that does happen, but that's what we're here for, is to help you feel more empowered to want what you want and go for it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think when I look at this slide that's up, I think what reward in life is better than that? Is better than being kings and queens, priests and priestesses, and having and building an eternal family through the covenants of Israel. With all the blessings of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, as it says in our sealing. I think it's important to take that seriously and not just sort of casually say, well, it doesn't really matter. And I want to say too that some of you know, I was divorced twice. My second marriage was very short, didn't even last a year. But when I got that divorce done with, and I was working on my recovery process and getting back into dating again, I remember seriously asking myself a question. And I believe it was in the temple that it sort of came to me. I was anointed to become a king and a priest. And I'm not just looking for my eternal companion. Eternal companion has become kind of a trite term. I mean, a dog could be an eternal companion. A bird could be someone who's always with you. No, I was a king looking for my queen. And I promise you, understanding that really at a deep level changed the way I looked around, changed the way.
That's the narrowing the search, isn't it?
Yeah, changed the way I approached it. You want to marry the king or the queen, not the court jester. And
unless you want a court jester.
I guess, if that's where your heart is. But
maybe it's going to be a funny king. if that's important. to you.
Anyway, if they have the heart of a king, they can have a sense of humor or not.
Well, let's go to the
But-
next slide. Let's see, I'm going the wrong way. Next slide. We just wanted to make sure you are aware that we have 2 days left. This Saturday, this weekend is when we close enrollment for September through December for the Lily Ladies and Knights of the Lily. And we did an orientation for this last week, so you could, or 2 weeks ago, and we can get you a link for that if you want more information. You can also go to our website and our group coaching page and learn more there. But basically, for just a little more than a cost of one private session with us, which is normally $150. For $200, you'll have us for 4 months, and not just once a month, but like consistently throughout the month, because we have group chats, and the people who join are wonderful. They're the people who are working on their mindset intentionally. And I would say that this option is more for if you want to work on your life in general, like, because it's open for anything. Whereas
Could be about, you could come and talk about your career. I mean,
you
people
could,
do that.
Yep, anything. And this, if you were going to take the course, this is obviously more specifically geared for courting with confidence, as you know, and you know the course content because we've shared it all with you. So if you would like to take courting with confidence, it's $297. There's more than $3,000 worth of material, and it's a 12-week course. It's very in depth. But it's not too much information to take in that time frame. And we will be, and this is our schedule if you want to take a screenshot of this so that you can put it in your calendar. They'll also, all the recordings and bonus content will be available for your use forever. I mean, it's like lifetime access. The other one, so with the membership, you'll have a login for the 4-month period, and then if you renew, then you'll keep going. But with this one, it's lifetime access for any course that you take from us.
And there's nothing to say you can't do both.
Yeah, you
You're welcome
can.
to be a member of the Knights or the Ladies
But those are your 2 options for
and
this,
to take this course.
for you for this fall, and you can do both, because one's on Thursday evenings. This one's on Thursday evenings at 6:30, and these are on Tuesdays at 6:30. Other than Halloween, we decided to miss Halloween and do Wednesday that week, but stick with that every other week schedule. And then on alternating weeks, you're gonna have integration assignments, so you'll have lots to do, but all good stuff in a very organized fashion. Then the last couple slides, and remember, we've got links over there for everything. We just wanted to share with you that if you were interested in taking all the courses, if you bundled them together, you save a little bit, even though each one a la carte individually is a really good value. You do have the option to take them all together, and I provided a link over there for that. And actually, there's 2 more slides really quick. Just wanted to make sure that you're aware that we have a weekly Lily letter, a weekly podcast, and weekly videos and shorts. And if you're not currently subscribed to these, there are links in the show notes. For those taking it live, it's in the chat. For those who are watching the replay, it will be in the show notes.
And you can see our website there listed, loveandlateryears.com.
And speaking of which, we have a brand new website, and we're really excited to share with you. You can feel free to explore and schedule a free 20-minute consultation with one of us. We would be happy to meet with you individually and create a customized roadmap for you. So if you're kind of not sure what to start with Lily, because I know we've got a lot of resources, we would be happy to meet with you and help you know where to start. So we're gonna stop the share, and we're just gonna end this recording, and then we'll open it up for a little after party for those who are left, and if anybody has questions. So we just want to thank you for coming, and encourage you to look at the show notes and check out the options that we have for you in Love and Later Years.
It looks like John Parks is wanting to be part of this course, or perhaps the group, or maybe both.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Um,
And hopefully we've got some people watching the replay that want to join us as well. So just make sure you check the show notes, and until we see you again,
Remember that any time is a great time for more love in your life. Now, if you want to talk or you want to ask a question, feel free to unmute your mic.
and we're gonna start that right now, but first we're gonna end the recording. Thank you so much for watching.